So I had that feeling this last week, the one where your stomach drops before your brain even catches up. I'm in Salt Lake City, already on my way to the gate with my bags checked in. And just for context, Salt Lake City is not one of my most favorite airports. I've always had one of those connection incidents where I had to run from one end of the terminal to the other end to catch my connection. So this was the first time actually when I got to the airport with plenty of time and not needing to catch a connection. The event I was leaving from, Rainfocus, was in Salt Lake City, and I was just on my way home. So I'm thinking to myself as I am very calmly walking the distance from TSA check-in to the gate, that this is actually the first time when I am not in a rush through the Salt Lake City airport. So I was feeling at peace. That moment did not last long because I got to the gate and I was looking for my charger to charge my phone when I realized that my charger is gone. And I was trying to remember where did I leave it, and that's when the connection was made. It wasn't just my charger that was missing. It was my DJI video recorder. I already saw where I left it. I was working on the third floor at Hyatt Regency, and I had some time after the morning meetings at Rainfocus, and I charged my phone, and then I plugged in my video recorder because I was thinking that I will be looking at the content, transferring to my phone. I'm going to create some reels, and then I would download the content, which was a lot of B-roll from the conference, conversations, as well as podcast episodes. So this one piece of gear, it wasn't just the gear, but it was everything that happened at Rainfocus, everything that I captured, including my AI workshop, which I recorded as well. In the moment when I realized that it was gone, that I was still on the third floor of the hotel, plugged in the wall, hopefully, I really felt it in my body, like that tightness in the chest, that quiet panic that says, this is going to be a problem. Not because it was expensive, but because it represented my work, my podcast recordings, the conversations had, the time spent, all of it was there, plus my workshop that I just gave. So it was basically the physical version of losing something you care about and realizing you might not get it back. So that's the premise of this episode. I want to give you the inside story of what happened. So stay tuned for what's next.
Events Demystified, the podcast for event professionals.
This episode is brought to you by Trifan Events Production. We don't just produce events, we power them with AV, AI, and strategy. From bespoke AV production planning and management to AI workshops, courses, and keynotes, we help teams build smarter events and stronger businesses. Learn more at trifanevents.com.
Welcome back to Build From Within. This is Anca Platon Trifan. I am the host of Events Demystified Podcast. And this mini-series runs in parallel with our CEO edition. Today's episode is about two things that collided for me this past week in a way that I didn't really expect it. I spent a majority of the week at Rainfocus, and that was a great time spent because it really showed me where the event industry is going as far as AI, technology, integrations, and being able to connect with people. Rainfocus is a smaller conference, and you have the opportunity to have in-depth conversations with event technologists that go to this type of conference, but also event teams that run really large user conferences. We're talking about teams from Databricks, Workday, Red Hat, Cisco, really big teams. So another reason why this episode is important is because what happens when total strangers come together, which reminded me why I am and I have been in this industry for so long. Because as I said, this past week, I saw both extremes at the same time. Some of the most advanced conversations about AI, agentic systems, data orchestration, and event intelligence, but also some of the most basic, humane, old school kindness that I've experienced in a long time. And the combination of those two things made me realize something about this industry and about myself. And I think a lot of us feel this, but don't always say it out loud. So this episode is a recap of what happened at Rainfocus, as well as a reflection on what happens when technology gets smarter, but the things that still save us are human. The things that save us are the people. So going back to my story that I started with, once the initial panic passed and I realized where my recorder was, I got on the phone with Rodney from Rainfocus, and I was trying to figure out who else is on site that might be able to track down the recorder and then ship it to me, because I had no time to leave the airport, go and get it myself, come back. Even if that exchange would have happened in 30 minutes, I would still not have had enough time to make my flight. And the next thing was calling the hotel and asking them if they could send a team member to check on the third floor if the recorder was still there. It was literally plugged in the wall by a meeting space in the open. It could have been gone. Anyone could have picked it up. They had the on-call on-site team striking the meeting rooms, the GS session, and anyone and everyone that was there could have seen this one thing there by itself and take it. So Brandon at Hyatt, he's the manager at the front desk. He was very kind to have one of his team members go on the third floor, look for it, track it down, and find it. The next step was trying to find someone from Rainfocus still on site. And we were able to connect with Amy from ATWM events, and she was wonderful. She was in charge of shipping some of the things from the trade show, and she jumped right on it without any hesitation, without needing context, without asking what was in it for them. I found myself really helped by two strangers, basically. And that, to me, speaks to what this industry is all about. Yes, this industry is intense. And yes, there's a lot of high pressure. And emotionally, is very demanding. And logistically, can be insane. And sometimes you do feel like you're living in a constant state of control chaos. But if you zoom out for a second, there's also this incredible rare thing about the event people that show up for each other. And it's not just for the sake of showing off, for the sake of bragging. It's not transactional. It's not because it looks good on LinkedIn. It's because when you spend enough time in environments where things break live in front of real humans with real expectations and real consequences, you develop a different kind of nervous system. You develop a different relationship to responsibility and to teamwork and to empathy. And you realize very quickly that you don't survive in the industry alone. You survive through the people in the industry.
Events Demystified, the podcast for event professionals.
What made Rainfocus hit differently for me this year is that, while this wasn't my first time on that stage, I have spoken at Rainfocus before. I know these rooms, I know the audience, I know the caliber of leaders in the crowd. So I wasn't really walking in there to prove anything. I was walking in, paying attention to what was shifting in the event technology space as well as the AI. And what I noticed almost immediately was the change in the questions that were asked. I think that's what hit differently this time. Last time, the energy felt still very exploratory. There was good levels of curiosity and possibility. What could AI become? What might be unlocked? But this year, the questions felt much heavier, more grounded, less theoretical, not what is AI, more about how do we integrate this without breaking our operations? How do we avoid data fragmentation? How do we avoid the emotional overwhelm that comes with all these tools that are being deployed all at once? How do we make this actually work in real systems? And I think from an AI point of view, that is a maturity shift. That's what it sounds like when an industry moves from experimentation into responsibility. People are no longer playing with AI, they're being asked to operate with AI. And I think there is a massive gap right now between AI curiosity and AI readiness. Leaders are intellectually interested, but at many levels, operationally overloaded. They are being told they need to adopt AI, but then their tech stacks are too complex, their data is too messy, their teams are stretched too thin, and no one has actually redesigned how work is supposed to flow. So when I say AI is not just a tool, it's a strategy. This is what that means in real life. You can't just layer intelligence on top of chaos and expect clarity. You can't just add a bunch of agents to broken processes and then call it transformation. And you definitely can ask already exhausted teams to learn AI without changing the underlying architecture of how decisions are being made. And what's interesting is that the dominant thread across the conference wasn't really about tools, features, or even AI in the way most people talk about AI. It was all about systems and processes, intelligence systems, agent-based systems, orchestration layers, decision engines, and the idea that modern events have now reached a level of complexity where human cognition on its own simply does not scale cleanly anymore. The strongest signal I picked up from session after session is that the industry is quietly shifting from automation to intelligence, from content generation to decision compression, from dashboards to real-time guidance. The problem is no longer the lack of information. We have plenty of information. We have plenty of data. If anything, too much information, too many sessions, too many activations, too many networking opportunities, too many overlapping sessions, and too many decisions hitting the same human brain that still has the same processing limits it had 20 years ago. So sitting in those rooms and listening to the people talk about agentic AI and orchestration layers and real-time personalization, I had this very quiet moment of recognition where I realized that this is literally the same work that I've been doing for the last few years, just with different language, because the entire premise of this podcast is that without internal systems, you pretty much default to intensity or you default to over functioning. And I personally know I can default to just carrying everything myself and doing the work, being the executor. But that's where you realize you cannot scale. And that might look impressive from the outside for a while, but it's certainly not sustainable. And eventually, complexity outgrows capacity. And when that happens, something breaks. It's either your health, either your nervous system, either your relationships, either your business, or even your sense of self. What Rainfocus has done is show at an industry level that the same thing is now also happening to events as a system. Complexity has outgrown human capacity. So we are building those intelligent layers to manage what humans can no longer manage on their own. And that is why the strongest use cases I saw were not about generative content or flashy AI features. They were about real-time prioritization, intelligent recommendations, adaptive agendas, personalized information, and decision support, because the actual value of AI and events is no more just information. It's better filtering. It's no more just more sessions, more content. It's better sequencing. It's no more tools. It's better orchestration. One of the other big shifts, it's better orchestration. Now, one of the other big shifts at Rainfocus was the idea of persistent attendee profiles, that the system remembers you across years and cities and formats and events, what you attended, who you met, what you engaged with, what you care about, what Salesforce does, and uses that history to curate future experiences. And when you really think about that, what they're building is basically a memory system, a learning system, a way for events to evolve based on accumulated human behavior. And this very much mirrors emotional fitness in a way that's almost poetic, because emotional growth is literally about whether or not you have a system that learns from your own history, or whether you simply accumulate experiences without integrating them, repeat patterns without updating them, carry story forward without ever questioning whether they still serve you or not.
Events Demystified, the podcast for event professionals.
Another strong signal from Rainfocus was the way ROI is now being reframed, because events are no longer being treated as brand moments or marketing campaigns. They are very much being treated as revenue systems, sales systems, demand generation engines, and the metrics that matter are no longer just attendance and engagement. They are pipeline velocity, meeting quality, account expansion, post-event conversion intelligence. And once again, this reflects real life in a way that feels deeply familiar, because effort without direction does not scale. Emotion without structure does not convert, and energy without systems eventually collapses. And underneath all of this, the most honest thread at Rainfocus was all about data governance, because without clean data, connected data, trusted data, none of this works. No agents, no intelligence, no orchestration. That maps almost too perfectly onto internal life, because without truth, nothing will stabilize. Without integration, everything fragments, and you cannot build intelligent systems, external or internal, on top of chaos and noise. And I think this is where the body piece really lands for me, especially if you listen to the last episode from the Build From Within series, because I've been very open about the fact that swimming is very much my current focus and my pain. It's the skill that I am very much working and building right now. Weightlifting, obviously, is still my anchor. That's the system that regulates me. That's where my nervous system actually resets. But swimming is the edge. Swimming is the place where I am so uncomfortable on purpose. So going into Rainfocus, I already knew that I was going to do my workouts. I already knew what gym I'm going to be working out into, because I do that research in advance. What I didn't plan for was getting sick, being cold, and realizing that the only pool available was going to be pretty cold and freezing. The hotel did say that they have a pool that is outside that gets warmed to 80 something degrees. That was not really the case because I certainly felt more like 60. And it was definitely not something that I was excited about after long conference days to get into freezing water. So I ended up not doing my swimming breathing drills while I was at the conference because the environment just didn't make any sense. I was still recovering from my cold. But and my voice being gone, if you remember, that episode sounds like I had this very scratchy voice, and I'm glad to have my voice back. But what's interesting is that taking that short break from swimming actually did something unexpected. So I took that whole week off. I came home, I got back into the pool, and suddenly my breathing drills felt much better. They're more controlled, more natural. Things I had been grinding for the last 2 weeks finally started to click, which was also a really good reminder that not all progress is linear and not all breaks are setbacks. And sometimes you really need to give your nervous system some space to integrate what you have been working on and training. And obviously, weightlifting never stopped. That's still my baseline. That's still something that really regulates me. I really enjoy that part because, especially when you're at a conference, at an event, when you're on stage, when you're in sessions, when you're in conversations, there's this constant context switching that's happening, constant absorbing of new information, constant making those micro decisions. So your nervous system really never gets a break unless you give it one on purpose. And for me, working out, giving myself space to think that's what weightlifting does for me. And that's when the realization also landed, standing in those rooms, listening to leaders talk about AI, innovation, and systems, and skills, and speed. Leaders are being asked to deliver more cognitive performance than their bodies and nervous systems are physically equipped to sustain. We keep talking about productivity and innovation and AI readiness and decision making, but we ignore the biological system those things actually run on. And then we wonder why burnout is everywhere, why decision fatigue is constant, why people feel overwhelmed even when they are successful and they look like they're doing great things from the outside. This is one of the reasons why I keep coming back to the same conclusion over and over again. Regular exercise is part of the job. The Fit for Events framework exists not because it makes you healthier in some abstract future sense, but because it really directly supports cognitive function, emotional regulation, stress tolerance, and decision quality in the present. And there's plenty of research that talks about that. Movement improves executive function, reduces perceived stress, increases energy availability, protects against cognitive depletion. This is not about just aesthetics. It's really about capacity. That it's always been about capacity for me and the ability to be able to go at the speed that I go, to do the things that I do, and not feel like I am dead by the end of the day after day. So after 3 days of sitting in those rooms talking about agentic AI and orchestration layers and data models and intelligence systems, the thing that actually saved me again goes back to what I started talking about in the beginning, and that is human behavior. People who notice, people who care, people who act, people who treated my problem like it mattered, like it was theirs, which is why, in my opinion, no matter how advanced this industry becomes, most of us stay in it, and no matter how busy it becomes, no matter how overwhelming, most of us stay because of the humans. Event people, I truly believe, are built differently. They do build this ability to stay calm in chaos, They have this resourcefulness under pressure, agile and slightly unhinged in the best possible way. Always carrying a backup plan and a backup plan. And then when things break, they don't look for someone to blame. They look for someone to help. As we're coming to a close here, I'll leave you with the same question that I've been asking myself and the people that I talk to and my friends as I was sharing this experience that I just had. And then also I posted this on LinkedIn on my profile. Why do you stay in the events industry? What's actually keeping you here? Because if you're still here, I'm pretty sure you already know the answer, even if you've never said it out loud. Maybe the exercise here should be saying it out loud for yourself to remind you the reason why you're still here, the reason why you're doing the work that you're doing. Just as a reminder to center you, to really give you the motivation to keep going, to give you the ability to keep going even when it feels hard or even when you have to overcome challenges. If you've been following the series, especially the CEO edition, you already know that this is an ongoing conversation and every episode builds from the previous one. So if this one resonated, go back and listen to the other episodes, both in the CEO edition series and the Build from Routine series. They're all different entry points into the same core theme: leadership under pressure, decision making, energy systems, and what it actually takes to sustain excellence long term. This is also the same work that I am doing in my memoir. Yes, I am still writing and editing that memoir. I still have this one chapter that I need to put down, and it is the AI chapter. And the reason why I'm delaying this is because things are moving so fast, are changing so much. I finally feel like I'm coming from a place of understanding of where we've been for the last 3 years and the direction that we're going into and the direction that I would like us to be going more into. Stay tuned for that. If you have not subscribed to the newsletter, please do. The links are in the episode notes. I'm processing a lot of that in real time. Also, if you want to take this conversation offline and into a different room altogether, I welcome you to join me in Canada next week in Edmonton, which lucky to me is no longer minus 20 degrees. It's going to be more in the 30s. I can definitely deal with that because I was already questioning my sanity of going to Canada and trying to get to where I need to get without freezing. Like I already freeze in 30 degrees. What am I going to do in Canada in minus 20? Anyway, I'll be speaking at Go West. And I'm very excited about my first keynote in Canada. It's going to be on the topic of AI that plans with you. And I'll also be leading an AI workshop afterwards with real workflows and real use cases. I'll be doing a live taping of Events Demystified Podcast on the main stage. And as always, if you want to stay in the know with how that's going to go or where it's going to go or when it's going to post, all of that, subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss the news, you don't miss future episodes, and especially the rest of the CEO edition episodes. The last episode that I had with Robin Raskin, it's one of my favorites. It's fantastic to see someone like Robin that's been in the industry for 100 years be so in tune with the changes that we're going through and today's times. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. If any of this resonated with you, share the episode with someone in your world who works in events, leadership, or technology and needs to hear this conversation. If you want to stay connected, follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, head on to my website, and you'll find all the updates on my upcoming talks, keynotes, workshops, and everything else that I'm building. You know that I'm pretty easy to be found if you just Google my name. I'll see you in the next episode of Build From Within. Until next time, stay human and get fit for events.
Thanks for tuning into Build From Within, part of Season 11 of the Events Demystified podcast, running in parallel with the CEO edition.